Hi guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome back to Upside Down Books and to today's video, which is a book review. I have just finished reading The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi and I loved it. And hopefully I'm also pronouncing the name right, but forgive me if I'm not. This is such an exciting book to have finished because it is also ticking off one of my challenges for the year, which is to read the books that I received my birthday in 2023, and this is one of them. So thank you, Gemma, and thank you for bringing this into my life because this was genuinely fabulous and probably one of my favourite reads for this year, if not all time. If you've not heard of this book, this is, the new book by Shannon Chakraborty, and Shannon Chakraborty has written the Davabad trilogy, I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is the city of brass and something and gold and copper and I don't know. And I haven't read that series, but I have heard so many good things about it, and so it's definitely high up on my list to read now that I've read this one. I think this immediately had appealed more to me than her other series, so this has been higher on my radar than her other one, just because it's slightly thinner and less chunky and less terrifying, let's be honest, but it's also pirates and fantasy and adventures and set in the Arabian Sea in thereabouts the 13th century, so like tick 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 tick, so many things I'm excited about there. Not to say that none of that exists in the other series because I don't actually know very much about it. I think we're mostly just, let's be honest, it's just a very big series and I am intimidated. But coming back to this one, the tagline on the back says, "A pirate of infamy and one of the most storied and scandalous captains to ever sail the seven seas." I just immediately fell in love with the concept and the premise of this book and was just really keen to dive into it. So this has heavy themes of Arabian folklore and Muslim characters that are present, as well as a really diverse smattering of characters which you would expect given the time and the setting, the fact that they're pirates, that their crew is made up of people from different seas and shores, but the way that it was done was like really beautiful, and I feel like it was a really good example of how diversity absolutely enriches a plot, and diversity done well. No one is shoehorned into this story, everyone brings something extra with them, and it just makes it wonderful. This was slow to start with though, I will say that. I rated it 5 stars, I told you it's something I loved, and to start with, like for the first half of the book, I was a little bit worried. I was thinking perhaps my fears and anxieties, apprehensions perhaps about the other series of it being big and difficult to tackle might be applied to this. Maybe this, despite looking thinner, this is still very close to 500 pages. It is printed on very thin paper, so it is quite the deceptive book. And so for the first half of the book I was a little bit concerned that while good, it was a little bit slow and lacking excitement, but then suddenly when things pick up, oh boy did they pick up. So for the second half of the book I would say things were just absolutely non-stop and crazy, and they just got crazier and crazier and crazier, and like the craving that you might have for the fantasy elements, the folklore, the myth, and the weird things, that all happens in the back half of the book. So all I can really say in short sum is don't give up on this one and settle in for a nice, well-rounded introduction to the story, which is exciting in its own self, but like absolutely nothing compared to where this book ends up going. So in this story we are following a character called Amina, and this is written as a chronicle, so it is from the present day, whatever present that may be, and it is her having her story chronicled, so it's sort of a conversation between her and a chronicler. It kind of reads as if they are writing down or recording the story as you're going through it, so it is interrupted or interspersed with sort of present day commentary, usually breaking up chapters or sections just to be like, let's just pause and explain a couple of things. And then every now and again there are actual interjections within the stories themselves which are quite entertaining. I really, really enjoy this chronicler storytelling style. They often like end up being the kind of books that do take a little bit of patience to sit with them and get to know the characters a bit more, but the payoff on these kind of stories, when done well, is exceptional, and this was no exception. So there's that really fun element, and then also interspersed at relevant points throughout the story are pages that have a sort of different typesetting like design going on, like this, as versus just your regular page. That's the imprint, as versus just the, the regular pages. And these are usually introducing you to a simplified version of some sort of Arabian myth, and it's really interesting. It's done tongue-in-cheek and still from the chronicler's perspective, rather than like present-day Amina or, whoever it is that's doing the other present day storytelling. I hope you're following me here. So it's not just like straight up myth, blah blah blah. There is an element of humor running throughout the whole book, let's be honest. And I think the tone of the writing really like embellishes Amina's character. She is an older character. She describes herself as old and with like a bung knee, but given that it's the 13th century, I'm not sure whether old is like 30 or whether she's like 40 pushing 50, not sure, but somewhere in that vicinity. So this story starts off with us meeting Amina, knowing that she is a retired pirate and she is no longer looking for any more trouble in her life. She is so done with that, but she kind of craves it a little bit and she misses her ship. So she doesn't currently have her ship with her. She's left it with a friend who's looking after it, and her pirate band has disbanded. But when an elderly lady who is very wealthy comes and sort of blackmails her into helping her find her missing daughter, Amina finds her arm twisted, and that is where the story kicks off, because she goes, okay, I'll ask a few questions. And I think everyone, Amina included, knew that it was never going to end at just a few questions. So this is a really wonderful chronicle of a story as Amina kind of goes back into her old life, not looking to start pirating, but we are following her trying to figure out where she can draw the line and how she can balance being like her, not necessarily her pirate self, but dealing with her pirate legacy, because she's very well known and feared, as well as being a mother and trying not to abandon her family at home. There were some really wonderful feminist themes on this. There was also some like gender and sexual diversity represented, I will tell you that, but that is all I'm going to say, because you get to explore how that is represented, and it's also not a crucial part of the story. I really enjoy the feminist themes of this. It makes me, like, that subtle and very sophisticated way that Shannon has managed to bring this into the story has me really excited to read more of her stuff, and this is meant to be a series, which makes me very happy. There is just like a very I don't know, well-woven aspect of Amina's character as this mother, and sort of ending up in situations she's trying not to get, you know, she's one of those characters that's trying to avoid trouble, but it just keeps coming to her. And she's going, how can I be both? How can I do both of these things? Where do my loyalties lie? She's a very divided character in a way that I think is very relatable to many women who are pursuing careers or interests and passions, as well as managing a family. And I think exploring that idea of, you know, the dissected self, if you will, and, you know, how to manage that and what that looks like, and, you know, what society thinks versus what I think, was done really well. So if that kind of tickles your fancy, then I definitely can't recommend this enough. But on the pirating and adventure front, also please read this book. It is a game of patience to wait for what you know is going to be a crescendo of excellent writing and adventures happening towards the end. But, you know, I'm making it sound like it's really boring at the front. I think when you read it, you'll understand that it's just got nothing on the ending. This was a very well-rounded story. I enjoyed every minute, and the further into it you get, the more addicted you become to the characters. You want to know how things are going to end, you want to know more about them, you want to learn their backstories, you want to know what's going to happen next, and it just becomes increasingly difficult to put it down and leave this story alone. It's certainly one of those books that stuck with me when I finished, and have spent the last few days a little bit uncertain about what to read next, because it's one of those books that you were so immersed in such a complex way that it's just unimaginable to think that you could start that relationship with another book and another story. And I think that says, you know, that's high praise really of the kind of writing and adventures you're going to explore in this. It's really fun, the characters are plucky, the language is entertaining, the relationship that Amina has with her faith and towing the line with being a pirate but being a devout Muslim is very entertaining, and there are some extremely funny characters in here. One of my favourites is, I think it's pronounced Ruksh, but I could be wrong there. I won't tell you much about him, but he is a character with a few paranormal traits, if you will, who appears in the story and is certainly a metaphorical ghost, let's say, that haunts Amina's past. It's really interesting, but he is a very hilariously selfish character whose self-interests drive some like really hilarious plot points. Let's just put it that way. So look out for some great characters, because there is definitely so many good times to be had within these pages. I also have a really stunning edition of this one, which I will show you. As part of my Fairy Loot subscription, when this was released, I actually got this Fairy Loot edition, which you may have seen in my special editions haul, which has the pirate ship on the sprayed edges, and it is just absolutely gorgeous. So, and the map is just to die for. What I will say, one of the things that fascinated me the most in this story was the real authentic way that Shannon is able to bring the Arabian setting and culture like right into the forefront of the story, and I loved referring back to the map and sort of looking at this Arabian-centric view of the world, something that I have never really looked at before, something I've never read where it's so important because it's not, you know, this is a seafaring book essentially, so the seas and the countries that border that sea become important in an unusual way. And just hearing about things, you know, talking about Madagascar as being this far-reaching island, and going to Somalia and like India, and dreams of travelling to China as far away as they can. It was just such an interesting point of reference that I think as a Western reader, when, you know, me being from Australia, that hardly ever being the centre focus, but either America or Europe being the centre and, you know, the Far East being the centre point here, I think makes this so much more exciting. So certainly as a Western reader, if you're like me, then I think you'll find the novelty of this really interesting, and even not from that front, it is just well done and enjoyable, and nice to see, very nice to see. So it's got me so excited to read more about this story. Not more about the story, but more about the characters even. That is really everything I have to tell you about the Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. I highly recommend that you go and get it. It is so worth it. I'm really looking forward to book 2. I don't think we've had any announcements as to when, like no solid announcements as to when those are coming out, and certainly no titles, but nonetheless, I will be holding my breath in anticipation of book 2. I think this will be very much so like a chronicle, and it won't necessarily be one story followed the whole way through, but tomes and volumes of the adventures of her life that are probably going to be balanced with the present and the past. So let me know down in the comments below if you have read this or if you're planning to, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.